I can't believe I'm doing another video on the CGC reholdering scandal. But here we are. Let's try to get some perspective. We'll talk about a few salient points up next on this video from Bronzeville Comics. Hey there, panelologists. This is Jim from Bronzeville Comics coming to you with another video. And another video about the reholdering scandal. Please like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. And follow us on other socials, Instagram, Bronzeville_comics, same thing for Whatnot. Link in the description of this video, along with a link to my eBay store as well as my email. Get that out of the way. So, I'm coming with another video on that. And usually I don't delve into these scandals, but I think it's important to get some perspective because I've read comments on my YouTube video, on other YouTube videos, folks posting things on Instagram and other forms of social media, kind of making memes. Slabs are dead. Nobody's going to trust them anymore. You shouldn't buy them. You never know what you're going to get. Let's just take a step back and take a look at this from a more global perspective. I'm going to throw up, and I actually had seen this this little meme recently, and it is true in so many aspects of life. This cross-section between the problems that you are worried about and how much of them are reality and how much of them are just remote possibilities. This is something that is very true because people tend to think the worst case scenario in a lot of circumstances and think that everything bad is going to happen to them. It's also true on the other hand. You know, I'm a math teacher. I'm specifically a statistic teacher, and I tell my students about the probability of winning the lottery, winning Powerball. You have a greater probability of dying in a car accident on your way to buy your lottery ticket than actually winning the lottery. So we want to take a reality check. The fact of the matter is that the vast 99+% of slabs out there are what they purport to be. They're what the label says. They're what the certification number says. They haven't been tampered with. They are what they are. There are some, and if you bought a bunch from the same bad actor, you're going to have them. But the vast majority of them are what they are. Are some of them misgraded by CGC? Certainly. There's some books, you look in the slab, they gave it a 9.6. Looks more like an 8.59. They gave it a 9.8. There's spine ticks. They gave it, the other way around as well. There's going to be the element of human error in all of this. But why would someone at the extent, the scope at which it seems as though this one seller did by cracking out slabs and replacing the books in the slab with lower grade books, and either resealing the slabs or getting the slabs reholdered with custom labels, etc., etc., etc. So I'm going to go to the point. Ryan from Automatic Comics did a great video where he found a Hulk 181 CGC Blue Label 9.0 that had sold. And it was from this seller. He found a previous sale from the defects that were evident on the book, the way it was wrapped. It was overwhelmingly likely that there had been a previous sale of that exact book in an 8.5 qualified, missing the Marvel value stamp. But now let's take a perspective. There are nearly 14,000 universal blue labels of Hulk 181 and over 2,500 in high grade 9.0 or better. Right? So there are a lot of the books available out there. 2,500 in 9.0 or better. In any grade, There are only 1,200 qualified Hulk 181s. Okay? So of those, let's go back. More than 2,500 9.0s or better. How many of them have been tampered with? 5? 10? I can't think that it's hundreds of that particular book, right? So the overwhelming likelihood is if you buy a high-grade Hulk 181, you're getting a high-grade Hulk 181. There is a chance that you won't, right? And people are saying, shouldn't do slabs, can't trust them anymore. Let's take a step back, folks. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about perspective. And I had mentioned in a previous video, the idea of grading collectibles. Stamps, cards, coins, all have two sides. So, you get a Mickey Mantle 1952 Topps rookie card graded. You can look at it in its graded case and still see the front and back, and that's all there is to see. Yeah, you can't put it in the spokes of your bicycle anymore. It's harder to flip, but those aren't things you're going to be doing with that card. The same things you did when you were a little kid. And so you can still enjoy it. Same with stamps, coins, and you can present them in a certain way. Comics, not so much. Now, people, and I just in the infancy of trying to clean out my comic room. I'm doing a little bit of a job of it, but we still have a long ways to go. And building a wall. I would like to have a wall. Maybe here, we're still in flux in terms of how we're using the space in our house. But this was kind of a necessity out of family circumstances during COVID. But this space. But I like to display the comics, right? I like to have 9.8s. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of these books in 9.8s, they're very affordable in reader grade, right? You can get a reader grade copy if you want to have that in your collection. If we're talking about more modern 9.8s, right? You can get probably a mid-grade for $10 and have it as a reader copy, right? But it's nice to display the books, and that's there. Listen, if you're a person that's a never slab, that's fine as well, right? I totally understand that, right? I like to read the books too. I was just going through a collection, and there's a book that isn't worth a lot, but I pulled it out. I already have a copy, and I'm going to go talk more about this in a future video. It's this nothing book, right? Secret Origins #6. Secret Origin of Halo and the Golden Age Batman. I just want to read this again. I read this, 37 years ago. I don't know if I've read it since. Maybe I glanced at it once. It's been sitting in my collection. This is not from my collection. In a box. It's high grade. Am I going to read that book again? I don't know if I have time for that. I have a lot of books that I haven't read yet. But that's a whole other story. So, let's just go back. Why was there a need in the collecting hobby for CGC to exist? Right? That Marvel value stamp is one of the reasons. And that's why CGC gives a green qualified label to let collectors know very clearly that the book is missing a Marvel value stamp. And people who are well connected to the hobby understand that that's a book that commonly, that does have the Marvel value stamp along with some other big keys like the first appearance of Bullseye, etc. We know what to look for. But not everybody does. Right? And so if we got rid of slabs, if nobody slabbed their books anymore, anybody was only buying raw books, guess what? Guess what comes back into play, which was very prevalent 30 plus years ago, before CGC, very prevalent, is restoration. Trimming books, color touch. And in some cases, it's hard to detect from the amateur eye. Somebody's at a show, they see a nice looking book of a key that they want, and they grab it, not realizing that it's color touched. I actually had a book that came back a purple label, Color Touch, right? And it passed through hands, and not, I bought it from Street Side Anthony. I had it pressed by Erod. I looked at it. All three of us looked at the book, and nobody picked up the restoration. It happens. So of the ability to detect and note restoration is an important part of what CGC does for the hobby, right? Not everyone, especially for some Golden Age books where the page counts are different, are unusual, is able to count pages. Not everybody counts their pages when they get a new book, right? So if we get rid of slabs, we go back to more of a Wild West where it's much easier for scammers to scam, right? And certainly you sell a book at a show, and somebody buys it, they might not have your contact information, not remember you who are, they might never see you again as a seller. You might never see that seller again, and you have this book, there's no recourse, right? At the very least, with online sales, eBay or whatnot, if you're using PayPal goods and services, if you're using and you're using reputable sellers that there is some sort of there's protections there. I probably have, I don't know, maybe about 250 slabs. I'm pretty sure all those slabs are exactly what they say they are. Number one, because the vast majority of them I submitted myself. There are a few bigger keys that I bought slabs of, but very few. And if you buy a big book, really you buy any book slabbed, you should inspect the slab, right? And if you're the bigger the purchase that you're making, and this is for me, the bigger the purchase that you make in terms of the money that you're laying out, the more due diligence you want to put into making sure that is what it is. If you're spending $80 on a slab on whatnot, not a huge deal, right? If something gets past whatever, not a huge deal. But there's a certification number. There's ways to look it up. From that certificate, you can look at previous sales of the book in grade and see if that certification number is sold, especially for rare books, right? That is an important thing to track down, right? So it kind of gives you an assurance. I went to a show several months ago, Silver Age key that I already have a copy of. Looked pretty nice. I said, can I take a look at it? And I asked to take a look inside, which is something you should always do when you're buying raw books. There was a panel missing. And the guy said, I'm sorry, I didn't pick that up, and he put it away. Right? And I've seen it on the wall subsequently, and I don't know if he made note of the panel being missing. But yeah, you have to be sure that the book that you're buying is complete. When you buy a CGC slab, you're much more than you're probably 99.8% sure that the book is complete if it says it is, right? And if you're buying a Batman 181, the first appearance of Poison Ivy, if it has a blue label, it has the poster inside, almost certainly. Now, are there people that are doing wrong things with slabs? Certainly. But here's the other aspect of it. Why did this person do it, and did it so brazenly? Right? Props to members of the community. The 9.9 Newsstand, Swaggle West Coast Avengers, Automatic Comics, who did much more research than I have, and I'm just blathering on about this, finding books that were fraudulent. And now CGC's involved. They know who the seller is. Right? This guy was getting away with it because he had an immense amount of hubris. He was getting away with it a couple times, and then got away with more and more and more. And then you're working up to multiple $1,000 books, $10,000 plus books. But boy, did that idiot leave a paper trail behind him. Right? And, it's So why would a seller, and you have to ask yourself this question, you buy a slab from somebody who has a reputation, somebody who has 100% rating on eBay, who has a 5.0 rating and is there daily or weekly on Whatnot, who you see at shows all the time, or sells frequently on Instagram, maybe with Elite Comics 11. They don't want to risk their reputation as a seller by doing what this guy did, right? It's not worth it for someone who's in the hobby, who is, a well-respected member of the community, who is known. They're not going to risk their reputation by doing something like this. At least this guy went with the old adage, if you're going to steal, steal big, right? He wasn't taking, $200 9.8s and slipping 9.6s in, right? He wasn't doing the petty larceny. Maybe he did earlier, and we'll see what happens when CGC comes out with a full list. But he was swinging for the fences. And there are going to be potentially some very high fences around him for the foreseeable future. We can only hope that, the only way he's escaping from those fences is, like the Joker in the penitentiary, the spring on the pitcher's mound. Batman 66 reference for you kids. So most sellers don't want to risk their reputation doing such things. There are those that do. There are those that have ruined reputations already, right? So know who you're buying from. It's difficult to get away with, number two, and it's such a small percentage of everything that's out there, right? CGC also has to protect their reputation. They're a huge business that is doing slabbing books all the time. For the folks that are like, CGC's in on it, that makes no sense. They wouldn't damage their reputation to make a couple of $1,000s here and there on fraudulent books. Makes absolutely no sense. I think it was just a blind spot that was exploited. As I said, the Reholdering team didn't regrade the books. The inner well looked intact. Okay? Yeah, they'll probably change their procedure somewhat. One of the things I had suggested was having a laser etching on the inner well. And somebody countered saying, well, it's pretty easy to, if you have the right equipment, which is reasonably affordable, to do your own laser etching. Well, if on the there's only one inner well, unless you're going to duplicate an inner well, good for you. But this guy was slipping the entire inner well in. If you can match that up to the book, it's a different circumstance. So I think CGC is going to have to figure out how to, make their cases more tamper-proof and give more of a certainty to the buying public that when they buy a CGC slab, they're buying what it says on the label. Now, the other thing that's important to note is for most of 2024, I'm not exactly sure when it started, but I do remember noticing it at some point this year. When you go to type in the certification number of a CGC slab, or you scan the QR code on the back, and it gives you all the information in the grader's notes, it also gives you high-res scans of the book, right? So if you're making a big purchase, something that's been slabbed recently, you can look to see what the scans look like. Because sometimes on eBay or certainly on Whatnot, the scans are a little bit muddy. Know your certification number. Always, if you're making a big purchase of a graded book, always look up the cert number just to make sure. I've looked at things where I'm like, is this what it's supposed to be? Because, people can doctor photos on eBay, obviously, and there are a lot of scams. But the problem is most scams have a downfall, and this did. And this guy left a paper trail behind him. We'll see what happens to him. Hopefully nothing good. And again, one of the great things about this community is people are looking out for each other, right? For this scam, all the scammers, there are, like Fred Rogers said, look for the helpers, right? There are people that are uncovering it and bringing that information to the community. Thank you to those folks. Right? And which makes the hobby better. Okay? So don't blindly trust, but understand that the percentage of books that have been tampered with is very small, and that CGC and other grading companies exist for a reason, to avoid. I think it was Liberty Hill Comics made a comment, maybe on Instagram, about the 90s when dealers were restoring books, trimming books, color touch, glue added, reglossing, all that sort of stuff. They can't get away with that anymore unless they use PGX. But I digress. It reminds me of a story where a number of years ago, I went to get a Christmas present for my dad, right? And when I was a kid, my dad and I, we collected a lot of sports cards, and he was filling in, sets from the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. We'd get the new stuff, and then we go back and get old stuff. And I remember him, writing handwritten letters to ads in like Collector's Buyer's Guide or whatever the sports trade publication is. Can you send me this, number player from this year in this condition, and get the envelope in the mail. And it was always a lot of fun. So I went on eBay and I bought a 1953 Bowman Yogi Berra card for what I thought was a good price. But it was Yogi Berra. I mean, all-time great Hall of Famer, because he didn't have it in his set. And I gave it to him for Christmas, and he opens it up and he thanks me. He goes, "Just so you know, this card is trimmed." Because my dad knew, he just knew more than I did at the time. And it was a lesson learned. I was an unaware buyer of that collectible. And there are plenty of buyers that aren't as knowledgeable as you might be. And there are people that are just learning about the hobby. So I think it's important for all of us to look out for each other and to make the hobby better. We still want it to be a hobby. So I'm gonna, I think this will be the last video I'm gonna post on the subject. I do have, the next couple days, I have a collection video, and I'm gonna do another video, which is gonna be completely a different way of looking at comic collecting, and it's gonna be much more personal and much more like something that I took enjoyment out of the hobby with. So anyway, I'd like to thank you all for stopping by and spending some time with me, going on and on about this. I appreciate it. Take a look at a couple of my other videos here and here. And this is Jim saying until next time, enjoy your comics.